Can you hear me? Okay. Can everyone hear me? Okay, I am I am like super nervous. I've never done a public talk before, so please excuse me if I just kind of like look at the floor the entire time. But we're going to be talking a little bit about AuDHD, some signs that are in adulthood and childhood, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about medication and how I find ADHD medication kind of unmasked my autism traits a little bit. And then we can end it with some questions. So we should probably begin with introducing myself. So I'm Adelaide. I'm a content creator from Manchester. I originally started making content about anorexia and my recovery from an eating disorder, and I made videos kind of along the journey of that. So anyone who kind of followed me from TikTok and then follows me now saw me go from this kind of tiny shy person who was terrified of food to this very bright outgoing person who talks about autism and ADHD and helps other people just kind of be themselves and feel more comfortable in their own skin. And I think it's really nice that I do that. I love doing that, and I get a lot of kind of positive feedback from people as well. So I was diagnosed with ADHD last year, but I have a younger brother who was diagnosed when he was like 8 years old, and I just went like completely missed. And then I got my autism diagnosis about a month ago, so it's still very new, and I made a cake. It was very cute, and it was like all pink and purple, obviously. You would be forgiven for thinking my favourite colour is pink. It is not, it's green. So what exactly is AuDHD? So AuDHD is the term used to describe somebody who is diagnosed or self-diagnosed with autism and ADHD. And although there are some sort of similarities between the two, it is really important that we remember that these conditions are very, very distinct neurodevelopmental disorders with their own sets of traits and characteristics that very rarely overlap. So ADHD is primarily characterised with difficulties with attention, impulsivity, hyperactivity, and then we've got like a list on here of all the common ADHD traits, such as working memory. So we do struggle with our memory kind of on the spot. If you, for example, someone said to you like, "Oh, what do you do for fun?" Everything that you did for the past like 3 to 5 years just vanishes, no longer in your brain. You have no idea what you do for fun or even anything about yourself at all. People with ADHD crave spontaneity. We are often really forgetful, and we can be time blind. So I can't actually gauge time the same way as like a neurotypical person does. So if you said to me something takes an hour, that means absolutely nothing. That can literally mean 5 seconds or 6 weeks. Like an hour is not a time that I can actually comprehend. But if you said, "Oh, it takes like 2 episodes of The Office," that I can gauge the time with because of the way that time works with my brain. We're also really impulsive and can often be risk takers because we have an actual lack of dopamine in our brain, and so we need to do things to enhance the dopamine and get pleasure from things. Whereas autism is often characterized as, sorry, my mouth is like so dry, 1 second. My bad. There we go. So autism is often characterised as struggles with social interaction and communication and repetitive behaviours, which you would obviously know as like stimming. So like a lot of it is like hand flapping and sticking with routines and things. People who are autistic struggle with social cues and knowing like kind of when to engage in a conversation, or even if they are actually involved in the conversation at all without being sort of explicitly brought into the conversation, if that makes sense. And then in the middle, we've just got the traits that do kind of overlap. So although we have like insomnia, sensory issues, fidgeting, stimming, a really strong sense of justice, we have restlessness, social burnout, these are all symptoms that come with ADHD and autism, but the cause itself is what is different to make them kind of unique, if that makes sense. So although somebody can be diagnosed with both, it is really important to remember that they are two completely separate disorders. So we have a list of traits that are autistic and ADHD, so different signs in childhood and in adulthood. So having a hard time making friends and taking things extremely literally. So when I was younger, looking back now, like looking at a trait, looking at like a list of different traits, you would be kind of forgiven in thinking that it would be really easy to diagnose, it's really hard to miss, like all the traits are really, really obvious. But if you don't know how they kind of manifest in like real time, in real life, especially for people like myself who are like assigned female at birth, the traits don't sort of come out the same way they do with our like male counterparts. So my brother was diagnosed with ADHD when he was younger, and it was kind of known as like the naughty boy syndrome, where they just misbehave a lot. And because I wasn't like that, I was a very strict rule follower. I never really got into trouble. I was just missed because the traits weren't the same as my brother, whereas I would take things extremely literally. I would constantly not understand the reasoning for things. And there's a song by Eminem, I don't know if anyone listens to Eminem, probably not, but it's called Beautiful, and there's a lyric in it that's, it's like, walk a mile in my shoes. And I was just like, but like me and Eminem don't have the same size feet. Like, why would I want to wear his shoes? And like, why do I have to walk a mile with him? Like, why can't I walk a mile with him in my own shoes? And then it was explained to me that it means to like visualize their life. And I was still kind of like, but then why do we need to walk a mile? I don't understand. Like, why can't we get the bus? Like, why are we walking? Where are we going? Why can't you just tell me what's going on? And lots of different things like that are happening throughout my life that I just genuinely did take so literally. And if I was going out with my friends and going to the park, and my mum would be like, oh, if you leave the park and go anywhere else, come back and tell us. And I would go to the shop that's at the side of the park, but I would go home first to tell my mum and dad that I was going to the shop that is quite literally at the side of the park. And then my parents would get like really frustrated with me because like they're like, why are you coming back telling us? And I'm like, because you told me to. And I just assumed that that's what they meant because I took what they were saying literally. A lot of AFAB people as well are often diagnosed with personality disorders before they're actually diagnosed as autistic or ADHD, and that's because of our impulsivity with our ADHD and our lack of understanding our own emotions and being able to actually regulate our own emotions. So a lot of people who have ADHD tend to have something called RSD, which is rejection sensitive dysphoria, where we perceive kind of positive interactions as neutral interactions as negative, and then negative interactions are really, really heightened and they become kind of unbearable for us. And so we end up having like outbursts of anger and sadness and can just kind of sob and cry uncontrollably with not really any real reasoning behind it. So when you go to a therapist and explain this to them, they just assume you can't regulate your emotions, you're an emotional person, therefore you have an emotional personality disorder. So I was actually diagnosed as EUPD, which is emotionally unstable personality disorder, before I got my diagnosis of autism and ADHD. And I was also diagnosed with OCD, which OCD is really, really common with people, again, with autism and ADHD, because the traits overlap with the need for structure, routine, and repetitive behaviours. So with OCD, the reasoning behind the repetitive behaviours is different to what it is with autism. So with OCD, it's because of fear that something terrible is going to happen if you don't perform these certain rituals in a certain order, whereas there's not really a reasoning behind it with autism. It's more just an urge and a need to do it for self-regulatory behaviours. I then was diagnosed last year with ADHD, which was incredibly eye-opening, really, really helped me see that all of my past and lived experiences start to make sense. And I was given ADHD medication, and this medication, I take Concerta, which is quite a popular ADHD medication. And when I started taking it, I kind of noticed that everything seemed a lot more loud. Like, colours seemed brighter, people talking seemed louder. I couldn't focus as much as I thought I would be able to on the medication. And I realised that the ADHD medication itself was actually unmasking my autistic traits a little bit more. So if I take my ADHD medication, I'm able to focus on tasks that my ADHD would usually find boring, but I find I have a lot less spoons for tasks and stuff that I find fun, or I can't be as social as I would be if I didn't take my ADHD medication, because it's not as masked as it would be, if that makes sense. I feel like that didn't make any sense, but I know what I mean. So if I want to, for example, go to my friend over here in the corner, he's in a band, and if I want to go to one of his gigs, I tend to not take my ADHD medication because I know that I won't have the capacity to engage in the gig with him and kind of have fun there if I'm taking my ADHD medication, because my autism traits are a lot more heightened and I'm a lot more sensitive to everything. So that's kind of a mix between, and I have spoken to a lot of autistic ADHD people who are the same. They take ADHD medication and find that that's how they realise they were autistic. I know a lot of people do tend to get the autism diagnosis first, but I find that autism came second for me because the ADHD is what was more prominent and more at the forefront. So I'm the only person in my family who is autistic, as far as I'm aware, whereas there are quite a few people in my family who are ADHD. So that kind of gene is just a little bit stronger, a little bit more like overpowering, I suppose. I feel like really bad because I'm like finished and I like zoomed through this like you would not believe. I had like a whole thing, and I am so sorry, but I do have like like nothing left to say. I went really fast because my ADHD just was like, just get through it so then everyone can like leave. So if anyone has any questions, that would be super amazing, so then I can fill up my like time. I don't know where the microphone is. I'm so sorry that I just like zoomed through this, but yeah, the questions. Oh, 1 second, I'm so sorry. So I can hear you.
You've just described my life.
Oh my goodness, I can't hear you, sorry.
Anybody else here? Is it on?
Oh,
Got to be
yeah,
there?
there we go,
I've
there we
got to
go.
eat it, sorry.
That's okay.
Don't like that. You've just described my life and I'm waiting to go through my ADHD
okay.
bit.
Mm-hmm.
I am on antidepressants at the moment because I've also got the menopause thrown in.
Mm-hmm.
And I know if I miss a dose or miss 2 doses because the ADHD bit, the inattentive bit, makes me not quite focus, that I then go through a slump.
Mm-hmm.
You've just said about taking your AD meds and not.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that impacts? You say it gives you the ability to have the spoons to cope with that experience, but do you then get like a downside because you need to get your levels back up? I don't understand how the meds work in that way, really.
Yeah, so with my ADHD medication, I find that I'm able to focus more when I'm also taking antidepressants. I've been on antidepressants since I was 18, so for like a good 11 years, and I do find that if I don't take my ADHD meds for a few days, I do have what's known as a come down, and I feel quite lethargic. I feel a little bit more anxious than usual. I feel sort of out of it, and I just kind of want to sleep. I don't really feel like I want to talk to anyone, or I feel like I can't really talk much. And then I start taking my ADHD meds again, even that's just from missing like 2 days, and then it kind of like kicks in again and I'm able to focus a little bit more. But I do find the autism traits when they come out when I do take my ADHD meds, and then when I don't take them, I'm feeling very energetic because my ADHD is more prominent than my autism is. But yeah, if I don't take them for a while, I do have like a come down and feel very lethargic and tired, and I just kind of sleep a lot until I can like take them again. I find having a lot of things that you can focus on help with that period in time. So I like to watch like horror films. Like horror is one of my favorite genres. Like horror is a really big special interest, and because it kind of gets your heart racing and like you get like really excited when you're watching them, it helps with my energy levels a little bit as well when I do that. So finding something that can help kind of maintain your energy levels when you're not taking the medication. But not everyone who is diagnosed ADHD takes meds. Like my younger brother doesn't take medication. He doesn't find it very helpful, whereas I'm like the complete opposite. Like I do. I kind of rely on it a little bit.
It fascinated me when I went to the doctors because I'm 57 and I'm only just thinking, I'm a special needs teacher. I've been doing working with kids with autism, ADHD for years, but it's taken till the last 6 months to do some research on adults, and I've gone, that's me. And his first comment was, but you don't want meds, do you? And I'm going, I don't know what I want. I want to understand who I am, and I want to know whether I have got this diagnosis. And I want to work out what works for me, and it may or may not include meds. But it was like, well, I'll do this bit, but you're not necessarily going to get that. And I'm going, you've got to take each person on their own individual merits and what works for them or doesn't. And if I don't need to take meds and I can do things instead to help me, then ka-ching, I'm happy.
Yeah, I think the best way to do that, in my opinion, would be if you try and do like coping techniques. If you can find a really nice therapist who genuinely understands ADHD, to find like strategies that you can implement into your life without the medication, to see how you feel going forward that way, and then try medication and see if it does actually help in that aspect. Because I know sometimes people who are autistic as well, the medication tends to not work in their favor because we have kind of bad experiences with taking medication and stuff, and our body can't regulate the additional hormones and things that are being put into our body, which is one of the reasons I can't actually take like the contraceptive pill or anything, because the extra hormones, it sends me like really, I'm just not okay when I'm taking it, because I'm very sensitive to medication. So it's a case of seeing that what medication works for you, because there are a few different types of ADHD medications. I don't actually know anyone else who takes the one that I take, but I requested it specifically because it's least likely to suppress my appetite. As someone who's in recovery from anorexia, I wanted medication that didn't suppress my appetite as much, so that's why I went with this one as opposed to other ones which can be a little bit stronger and help more with the ADHD symptoms, but do tend to suppress your appetite a little bit more as well. I went off on a tangent there again, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's your ADHD. But I also am very, very sensitive to medication, so either something works for me or something is really not good.
Yeah, it's kind of like one or the other. Yeah. You don't really have an in-between. Like, it's not, oh, it's okay. It's either amazing or it's nothing. And it's the same with our emotions as well. Like, having a lot of trouble regulating our emotions is not only an autistic trait because we don't understand our emotions a lot of the time, but it's with ADHD and not being able to contain our emotions and having outbursts and things like that, which makes it a lot more difficult to find medication that does actually work for you in the long run. But yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Hiya.
Hi.
Hiya. Firstly, thank you for a fantastic talk. I can relate with you so much. I'm sort of very similar, but on the opposite end. So I got my autism diagnosis a few years ago, and in literally the last couple of months got my ADHD diagnosis.
Well, congratulations.
I had a quick scan of your QR code, and I saw the burnout resources you got, which look amazing.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, in terms of burnout, what if you've had any experiences about sort of when you get to that burnout stage, but you sort of, because I found I'll hit maybe near burnout with my autism, but then that ADHD is like, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, but you're like, no, I need to slow down because it's too overloading for the autism.
Yeah, I find that it's really difficult to find a middle ground, especially when you do have both, because like when I was saying at the beginning, they are so opposite of each other that the autism craves routine and structure and can't really go for a long period of time, whereas the ADHD is like, I need something new and shiny and full of dopamine and so much energy. And so you end up in this kind of like battle with which one is going to take the forefront. And I think it's really difficult, and what works for me is not going to work for everybody, but I find that the best thing that I do is I can tell now when I'm getting a little bit burnt out, and I'll just have tasks that I know my ADHD enjoys that are still kind of relaxing. So I have an art degree. I really enjoy art. I enjoy being creative. And if I'm feeling that I'm getting a little bit overwhelmed, but I'm really needing to do something, I'll just start doing some art, because I find that it keeps my ADHD occupied, and I'll do something different. So if I've gone through like a hyperfixation of painting for a while, I'll not do that because I know I'll get bored, and I'll do something different, and like something different that's also creative, but that I can do from the comfort of my own home, that doesn't take a lot of energy, but still kind of helps the ADHD get the dopamine that it wants. I found when I was younger, and I didn't realise I had ADHD and autism, and when I was getting like really bored, because I find that I burn out a lot more easily from boredom a lot of the time with my ADHD, I would doom scroll on my phone, and then 5 days later get a parcel, and I'm like, who's this from? And then realise it's from me. It's a present to me. I just forgot about it. And then that gives you like that little bit of dopamine. So it was something that I used to do a lot. That was what I did when I was burnt out, was just buy things all the time for the dopamine hit. So finding things that you can do that maybe help and put your phone away, or have certain TV shows that can like really keep your attention can really help. And having friends that you can talk to, like just FaceTiming your friends, even if you both just sat in silence doing absolutely nothing, it's nice to have that vibe, so you can both do like something creative together, so you can still get the relaxing atmosphere, but you're also engaging socially, which is helpful for the ADHD. if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more questions?
Got a lady.
Okay.
Hiya.
Hi.
I can't remember if you said that you think more people get diagnosed with autism or ADHD, but
Yeah.
do you think, in your opinion, that more autism is missed when ADHD is there because the ADHD is so much more prevalent?
Yeah, I do. I find that a lot of people who get their autism diagnosis first, the autism traits are more prominent. They're the ones that kind of are there, and then it's the ADHD that's in the background. Whereas for myself and obviously like a few other people, if the ADHD is really, really prominent and it masks the autism, and you yourself don't really understand that you're masking your own autism, it's really hard for people to notice it, especially like medical professionals, because they're not as educated on autism as we would kind of like them to be, and it's still really outdated and sort of geared, the diagnostic criteria is geared towards like
Boys.
children, mostly boys.
Yeah.
And so if you don't fit that, it's kind of like, okay, you don't have it then. And if you've got ADHD, you're already masking a lot of it anyway, because you're hyperactive, you're impulsive, you are seen as chatty, so you are kind of seen as someone who does well socially in social situations because of the ADHD, but then you end up going home completely burnt out and not understanding why you don't want to speak to anyone when you've just spent like an hour engaging in conversation and was fine with it. And that is how you kind of notice that it's like, is autism here as well? And then if you are, when obviously I started taking medication, which is what unmasked my autism a lot more, it was a lot easier to kind of get the diagnosis that way, because I was able to explain to them all of the symptoms that I was actually experiencing, that I wasn't experiencing as much when I wasn't on my ADHD medication.
So for someone like that, would you say like go back to your GP and say again, like I want to re-look at this?
Yeah, I would. Or if you genuinely believe that you are autistic, self-diagnosis is completely valid, and I would never, ever, ever tell anyone that it isn't. I self-diagnosed for 3 years before I was able to get my diagnosis, and you know yourself better than your GP does, because all your GP or the person diagnosing you knows is what they can visually see in front of them. And if you know yourself that you're masking a bit, or if you know that you're not really articulating yourself in the way that you need to be, they're not going to see that because they can't see, they don't know. So I would advise getting a second opinion. I know that some places are now offering ADHD and autism assessments together. Personally, I wouldn't really go for that, because I feel like they'd see one trait and then zone in on it and focus more on that rather than seeing the whole picture. So I would advise getting 2 separate diagnoses, because they are 2 separate kind of neurodevelopmental disorders.
Thank you.
It's okay.
Hi.
Hi.
So earlier you mentioned, wow, that's weird. Earlier you mentioned about RSD, so like rejection sensitive dysphoria.
Yeah.
I was wondering how you feel that may have like played out as you were like during childhood, like through your development, essentially.
Yeah. So I've suffered with RSD like for as long as I can remember, and when I was a child, I had a really difficult time making friends. I honestly didn't have friends like for the longest time, and a lot of the times I was bullied. I didn't actually realise I was being bullied. And the way that the RSD kind of came out in my childhood was a lot of crying, like not just like tiny little like little tear, like pure sobs, like screaming into my pillow, feeling like I was an alien, feeling like, why does nobody love me? Why does nobody like me? Why am I this weird person that nobody wants to be friends with? And I just constantly felt like nobody wanted me around. And that kind of spiraled into like quite a lot of depression. So I was diagnosed with chronic depression when I was 14, which is a very young age to be diagnosed with depression. But because I was just constantly feeling like I wasn't enough as a person, and feeling as though I needed to change who I am to fit in, to be liked, to be loved. And it wasn't just from like my peers and friends and stuff like that. It was from my family. Like I would feel that my mum and dad didn't love me as much as they loved my brother, for example, because of like just the way that my brain works. And it isn't anything against them. I love my mum and dad to pieces. They had no idea, but I just genuinely felt unloved, because my brain was like, well, no one loves me because I'm a failure, because I can't do this and I can't do that. And so it was really difficult in my childhood to actually manage and deal with that, and then not have depression. So then when I started taking antidepressants, they didn't really help because it wasn't depression. It was just RSD.
So the rejection sensitive dysphoria manifested with like adults in your life as well?
Yeah, yeah. So it's gotten easier to manage as I've gotten older, because I can see a lot of the times now when I know my RSD has been triggered, I will just talk to people and say, I'm feeling very rejected. I'm feeling very vulnerable right now. Can we talk about how I'm feeling? Can we discuss a little bit more about what you actually mean with what you're saying to me? And I have friends now who will text me after we've hung out and been like, oh my God, it was so good to see you. Let's hang out again sometime. Because that tiny little message takes you 2 seconds, but means the absolute world to somebody with RSD, because they then don't have that voice in their head that's saying they genuinely didn't want to be around you. Because as soon as I leave, like hanging out with someone, I just feel like they didn't want me there. That's the immediate thought that I have, is they don't want me there. So then when I get that message, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, they do.
No, because I experienced a similar thing. So like if somebody, I could be in an interaction that'll be going great, but then there'll be like one moment where they say one thing and suddenly the entire world goes cold. It feels like everything's gone silent and suddenly you're like, oh, right, I've just offended them really, but you haven't. But it just
you haven't, it's just the way that you are viewing the interaction, because people with RSD, which is very different, by the way, to being sensitive to rejection. So rejection sensitive dysphoria is a lot different to rejection sensitivity, because you can actually feel physical pain. Like it can manifest in diarrhea, it can manifest in migraines, it can be, you genuinely get like really unwell and feel physical pain from the rejection.
Really dysregulated.
Yeah. I think, I feel like we've got time for like maybe one more.
That lady was 8.
Oh, okay.
She's been waiting a
lot. We'll do you as well, it's fine.
Oh, right, okay, there you go.
Oh, cheers. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. Do you know when you have ADHD, do you have like experience meltdowns?
So I don't have meltdowns so much with my ADHD as I do with my autism, and they usually come if I'm like extremely overwhelmed and I feel I can't really regulate how I'm feeling and there's too much kind of sensory input. But I don't find that I have meltdowns so much with my ADHD as I do have sort of an inability to contain my anger. So I do have a like anger outburst that I struggle with the ADHD, which I was very embarrassed about when I was younger, because it isn't something that I'm proud of, that I get really easily like angered.
I do get embarrassed over meltdowns sometimes,
Yeah, but they're nothing to be embarrassed about. Like, you physically cannot help it. It's not something you're doing on purpose. It's not something that you should be ashamed of, like, at all. And I do find that I did, for a long time, feel really embarrassed about them, but I own it now. And if I feel like I'm in that kind of situation where I can feel that I'm getting too emotional, I'm getting too angry, I just remove myself from the situation and say, I can't really focus right now. My brain is not braining. I need to take some time. And I'll go and then I'll come back and have a conversation when I'm a little bit more calm and relaxed.
And also another thing, do you know when you mentioned about that if your parents didn't like love you as much, do you feel like you just like push them away sometimes?
Yeah. I would tend to like not go to them a lot of times, or because I would have like anger outbursts and stuff, and I was so socially overwhelmed from school and things like that, and I was really badly bullied my entire life. I'd go home and then feel really kind of not okay, and I'd lash out at my mum and dad, and I'd be like yelling at them like, you know, like, you don't love me, blah, blah, blah. Then I'd storm off into my bedroom and just cry and then think, I really wish I didn't do that. That was really not okay. But I used to write them letters and like slide it under the bedroom door like, I'm so sorry, Mum, I love you.
And also, all you should need is just time with your own friends who have your back all the time.
Yeah. So making sure you've got like a really good support network around you is really super important. Yeah.
Anyway, but just bought your book as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, that's so cute of you.
Thank you.
But I think I'm done. I've gone over my time. I'm so sorry. So I'm kind of glad that I like zoomed through, because we had quite a lot of questions. But thank you all so much for listening. If you haven't already like had a scan, I do have like a burnout template and a book about anorexia recovery and things that can be helpful for people doing that stuff, and like social media and stuff, but like no pressure. But yeah, thank you so much.